Back post the Bank of Canada statement. Let's take a look at the Canadian dollar. It spiked up right at 10 o'clock. You can see that, and peaked just about 5 minutes after analysts, traders had an opportunity to digest the statement. Maybe overall a little bit more upbeat than some of the previous statements. Street seemed to like that for the dollar, holding most of its gains, but backing off from the highs. Now we're going to go back to stocks now. Our next guest believes we're seeing the tip of the iceberg when it comes to opportunities in big data. Prakash Hariharan is chairman of AnalytixInsight, a data analytics company that uses algorithms to help investors research and analyze more than 50,000 stocks. He joins us in the studio.
Thanks
for joining us. We haven't seen you in a little bit. Let's talk about this Analytics Insight. What's unique about it? What is it?
Well, it's essentially a big data analytics company that I founded after I finished my stint as a fund manager, looking at stocks everywhere. It effectively picks up reams of filings, company filings, big data, and process that by doing a whole bunch of computations. The engine took about 3 years to build by the engineers, and I really got interested in the process of effectively picking up vast amounts of data and generating meaningful narratives out of that. I think that was a great piece of machine that was designed for stock picking and stock analysis, and I got interested in this company.
And is it all fundamentally based? So you've got revenues, earnings, ROEs, debt levels, that kind of thing?
Actually, it takes it a step further, and that's the reason why the company has been very successful in announcing a lot of licensing deals. And as I speak right now, we have just announced a big deal with Samsung. We actually made that announcement in March of this year, and we are effectively generating our content on stocks. Coming back to your point, it covers not just revenues and earnings, it's more than that. It gives you a meaningful narrative. It picks up for banks, for instance, tangible common equity, tier 1 common ratios. It lines it up with the peer group and tells you whether the earnings are strong, weak, how the dividend quality is, how the payout ratio is. And mind you, it does that all through a bunch of algorithms that's been processed over a period of time for various asset classes, from energy stocks to bank stocks to insurance companies, so on and so forth. 50,000
companies, I understand, being analyzed here. You mentioned Samsung.
Yes.
A deal. What would they do with this information, or what is that arrangement with them?
Well, Samsung is making a big thrust. Actually, as I speak today, they're having a very big event in Berlin where they're showcasing their new gadgets, like their gears, their new notepad, their new notebook, so on and so forth. But they're making a big push into the financial domain. They want to basically build a platform wherein they can generate content that's seamless across all mobile devices. So they've signed us as an exclusive provider of content for this platform. So oddly enough, they were very interested because we were generating content across stocks globally. So, and all the content is algorithmically generated. So if you're pushing in an app that's preloaded in the device and you look at a specific stock, the entire information on fundamental analysis of the stock comes through from our content generating tool.
Now, is the content freely available?
Yes, I mean, it's of course a pay-per-use model. So for every download.
So for the user, but for you, you're gathering this information.
Yeah, we're looking at company filings,
or whatever.
Company filings, and we do that, and it's done through a bunch of engineers in the U.S. and in India. And given my background, and I'm spending a lot more time there now, and obviously the engineers over there have been pulling out vast amounts of information. They do something like 100 billion computations daily. I'm not joking.
Oh, 100 billion.
Exactly. I mean, and we basically have processed that, and we've actually demonstrated that. And Wall Street Journal got really interested in us because we effectively take competitor analysis globally across all the stocks. So if there's a bank, for instance, in Canada, we could line it up with a bank in Europe, with a bank in Asia. And the big push that we made was in the ETF space, wherein we process something like 2,000 ETFs, agnostic of where it's coming from, because we do a look-through analysis for all the ETF filings and pick up information from there.
So it's great to have all this data. It's great to assess it all and show it comparatively and directionally.
Yes.
The ROEs are doing this, or Tier 1 capital is doing that. But how useful is it in picking stocks, if that's what somebody ultimately wants to use it for?
It depends on the end user. So if it's a retail investor, for instance, he gets a first screen of a lot of things that you don't really typically get in Google Finance or Yahoo Finance. Like we have a current arrangement with Yahoo Finance where we are giving them content for all their stocks, more than just PEs and revenues and so on and so forth, but a little bit more meaningful. And it's a great first cut screen for a lot of quant-based groups who look for hedge funds or financial institutions. But the real big push that we are seeing right now, apart from the stock picking ability, is for us to process content on the B2B side.
What is that, business to business? Business
to business. I think that's a really, really big industry, and I've been totally surprised at the extent of big data analytics that goes into this space.
How?
Effectively, if you're building a wealth management tool for the banks, you're generating a wealth management arm for a bank or a financial institution. You're having news flow, like BNN, for instance. They're having news flow, and they want to staple content of a specific news item along with it that's algorithmically generated, then it's a great tool to have to process that more seamlessly, maybe in your mobile platform, in your tablets, so on and so forth. So that part, the B2B space, is, the last numbers I checked was something like an $8 billion business. In just the financial institutions itself, that is basically processing business news, stock news, so on and so forth.
So you think you can capture some of that business?
Well, I mean, the intent there is to kind of be a good player. I mean, the whole idea here is to effectively be a disruptive platform wherein we can demonstrate the fact that through a search engine that we have built on financial analysis, we can take that step further. There have been a few other companies, actually there are two other companies who have been doing that, say for sportscasting. They take late night scores and they effectively generate narratives out of that on the fly. So that when you wake up in the morning, you know who scored the goals and the basic scoreboard, So a lot of these things are moving more and more towards big data analytics. So companies like AnalytixInsight or any other company for that matter will do well in the next 4 or 5 years.
And what is the cost of computing? So, getting the data is one thing, but yes, having the ability to use space, really, is it so cheap? Is the cost of actually the computation pretty cheap?
Actually, the cost of computation depends on your server capacity in a sense. So there's a little bit of infrastructure involved, but it's a highly scalable model the minute you've built a search engine. So where we are finding the biggest cost is obviously the incremental cost of generating better and better pieces of information, more processing time, and more capability in terms of engineering capability to engineer that. But in terms of actual cost of data, it's basically a commodity. I still feel baffled when you're paying $100 a month or $200 a month just to get real-time quotes. Where I think that financial data will end up becoming a commodity like many things else.
I think we've been waiting for that for a while, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
it hasn't happened yet.
That hasn't happened, but eventually that's an area where I feel that, if you're paying like $100 a month, like for instance, we are giving content in our mobile platform for something like $8 a month for real-time quotes, plus our, 2 or 3 pages of content across all Samsung's devices. And if you can generate content that way, I don't get the whole rationale behind charging.
We were just looking at a graph of your company, which is listed on the venture. It hasn't been a very pretty sight. It's a bit of a mountain.
Yeah.
Is that part of the way you funded it? What happened there?
Well, I think the stock just ran up very hard on the back of that Samsung news announcement that we made. And obviously people are waiting for the downloads and the opportunity that Samsung is providing. And it's just a venture stock. It goes up and down. And
it does go.
And, on small news flow, it spikes up. But eventually what's happening over the next 2 or 3 years, we're building a revenue pipeline for the company through our licensing deals. And we expect the stock to catch up then.
Very interesting story, Prakash. Thanks for bringing it to us.
Thank you.
Prakash Hariharan is chairman of AnalytixInsight.